I'm really on the design side, so I'm very lucky to have a business partner and have that whole structure taken care of when it comes to having to run projects and having to deal too much with clients. That allows me to really be involved in projects very closely most of the time, and to really sort of work with the team, on both sort of conceptual directions, sort of general ideas, but also on the details and the way something is finalized and eventually produced.
So say you get a client relationship going, you have a direction for a project. Do you draw still, or do you work on the computer?
Yeah, I mean, we do. I draw, and the team does piles and piles of sketches. It's pretty amazing because a lot of what you see as the final result, as somebody from the outside, and you assume everything's been done just on the computer. But actually the hand, for us to be able to look at a lot of different ideas really, really quickly, we sketch really quickly a lot of different concepts. We put everything up on the wall, and then for a period of 2 or 3 weeks, stuff goes up on the wall, comes down, goes up, comes down, until we get to the right place. So it's actually a very almost traditional process, but mixed in with a very technologically, very high speed, model making and prototyping and 3D type process.
And how many years has it been getting to this point with 35 people in your office?
It's been 10 years. Actually, we're going to celebrate 10 years of Fuse Project since I left Frog Design and opened the studio. And size has never been sort of a goal for me.
Yeah.
We could be happy with 12, we could be happy with 40, but I think we always wanted to keep it really small. But instead of sort of basing the success of the business on size, I wanted to base it on impact and a bit of the reinvention of the business of design, which has been kind of fascinating because we've been able to transform the way we do our work. Every 2 or 3 years we actually have a big shift, and there's one actually coming up.
What kind of shift? Give us the last big shift.
Sure.
You had then.
So the last big shift for me was bringing in a business partner and also dedicating myself to a lot of partnerships. So looking at design not as just a fee-based, consulting-based kind of approach to business, but really looking at ourselves as true partners to our clients, so we can work with them long-term, we can work with them on the fundamentals of how it is they do things, and so that our work has more durability, sort of lasts longer, and has more of a long-term impact on the clients.
I think a specific example the audience might be familiar with is the Jawbone headset, and you've became a business partner in the company Jawbone, which I think is a unique proposition for a designer, as you say, who's just generally been paid a sort of fee, and then you're done with the work. But here, how does that relationship change then, now that you're vested in the economic viability of the product?
Sure. Well, we have about 50% of our projects are these kind of venture projects, whether it's the motorcycle that was just up on the screen where we're also partners in it. But with Jawbone, it was an incredible story. I mean, it was basically the company was almost shut down. It was just the two founders and myself that were left, and we call it the hibernation or the Siberia, period of the business. And we had to come up with a new product that would make us successful, and we sort of really built it from scratch. And this is where we realized design isn't something that is just done for a couple of months and then transferred, and then the designer disappears and the company figures out how to do everything else. I think for me, design is really something that is constant. Whether you're doing the product, whether you're doing the imagery, whether you're doing the packaging, whether you're thinking about the website, whether you're thinking about the customer experience. To me, it's really 360 degrees. It's really three-dimensional. And creating that and thinking about that and thinking about it, especially, if you look at the competition. If you look at these big kind of siloed companies, right? Our competition are, giant multinationals, and the ability to look at something from the designer's vantage point at 360 degrees isn't allowed in places like Motorola and some of those places. So it's a unique position to be able to do that on a project like this, and it makes a difference.
So you're able to do that on a project like Jawbone, but for instance, the last time we were in sort of the situation, we're talking about working for Coca-Cola as well. So how does that? Are you able to translate that sort of holistic 360 approach to what is probably a siloed organization?
Well, I try. I mean, that's why people bring us on, right? Because they want to give design a bigger role in all of the decisions that are being made. But it's a lot harder for sure, and it takes longer, and it demands a lot of political skills, which you need to want to expand, and you also need to have the patience to explain that maybe to companies that were not set up originally to think in this way.
Right.
I mean, what's fascinating about Jawbone or Mission is that you really can create that vision from the onset, and it becomes part of the culture, right? Which Apple has been extremely successful at doing, right?
Sure.
Creating a culture which will replicate itself naturally. So it's harder to do later when you have to when it's not in the nature of the culture.
Maybe leads to design just being tacked on as a marketing tool, you might say.
Yeah, and that's a really big sort of problem. On the one hand, you have to embrace anybody celebrating and wanting to celebrate design, but I think there's also a real danger in that, which it just becomes, it becomes that lipstick on a pig kind of metaphor, which we've heard a little bit the last year. So that's, for me, it's really critical. That's why we're engaged in a lot of really big projects, but we rarely talk about them because I don't think they're not 360 degree yet.
I see.
I think you really have to be patient for those kind of projects and make sure that it isn't just a way for a company to recuperate the green movement or the sustainable movement or the design movement as a way to make you think that there was a turnaround, but when there wasn't one.
Was there a point in your career, maybe earlier on, when you lit upon this idea that you should address the marketing materials, you should address this sort of thing in a 360 way? Was there a moment that happened?
There was always a desire and always a frustration that I couldn't get that done. That it was, I think I always really believed that, and my idols are George Nelson and Charles Eames who did that. I mean, the visuals and the marketing and the that you see, for example, for Herman Miller really came out of the energy of those designers. And it's always been clear to me that you can do it. You can do that as well with technology or with other types.